"You're sleeping with me now," Mountain Man declared to the labor girl he bought at auction. "Sold!" barked the auctioneer, his hammer slamming against the wooden block. The word echoed like a death sentence across the cold square of Elk Creek. Anna Carter, only 19, stood on the platform with her hands bound, trembling in a thin calico dress. The January wind sliced through the fabric, biting her skin until her teeth chattered. She tried to keep her chin high, but the jeers of the crowd pierced her like knives. "Not much to look at," one man laughed. "Too soft for the mines," another spat. "She'll be dead in a week," someone muttered, tossing a coin at her feet. The auctioneer sneered, raising his voice. "Property of the Elk Creek Mining Company, sold off for debts owed by her late father. A worthless girl, unless someone here has use for cheap labor." Anna's cheeks burned with humiliation. Her father had died in those very mines, crushed beneath rock and lies, and now Samuel Briggs, the mine's overseer, had twisted his debts into a trap for her. She searched the crowd for mercy, but saw only contempt. Then from the back of the square a shadow moved. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped forward. His beard was streaked with gray, his coat worn from mountain winters, his silence heavier than iron. Jedediah Harper, Jed, the trapper who lived alone in the high country. He placed a single silver dollar on the block. Gasps rippled through the crowd. With a voice that rolled like thunder, he said, "She's mine now." His eyes swept the mob, daring them to challenge him. Then he turned to Anna, his words firm, unflinching. "You'll sleep under my roof now, eat at my fire, work my land, and no whip, nor overseer, nor man alive will touch you." The crowd fell silent. For the first time that day, Anna felt something close to hope. The murmurs of the crowd followed them as Jed Harper pushed through the square. His hand rested firm on Anna's shoulder, not cruel but steady, like a man guiding a colt out of a burning barn. Behind them, Samuel Briggs scowled, his lips curling with the promise of vengeance. Anna's heart pounded in her chest. Every step away from that auction block felt like a reprieve from the gallows, yet fear still knotted her stomach. What kind of man had just bought her? What did he mean when he said she would sleep with him now? As they passed the edge of town, Jed's voice finally broke the silence. "You're shivering. Take this." He shrugged off his heavy wool coat and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth shocked her more than his words. "I don't understand," she whispered. He glanced down, his eyes pale as winter sky. "What's there to understand? You're under my roof now. That means no overseer's whip, no miner's debt. You'll eat, you'll work, and you'll be safe, long as you keep to honesty." Her throat tightened. She had expected cruelty, ownership, but instead she heard a rough kind of protection in his tone. They reached the edge of the trail that climbed toward the mountains. Jed stopped, looking back toward the town where torches still burned in the square. "Briggs won't give up easy," he said. "You've something he wants, though I don't know what yet. You'll have to be strong." Anna lowered her gaze. "I'm not strong," she admitted. "If I were, I wouldn't have been on that block." Jed's reply was quiet, but sharp. "You're still breathing. That makes you stronger than most." The words lingered as he led her toward the timberline. By the time they reached his cabin, the sky had turned violet with dusk. The cabin was small but sturdy, logs stacked tight, smoke curling from the chimney. Inside, firelight spilled across rough-hewn furniture, a table scarred with use, A bed built broad and strong, a second cot in the corner. Jed set down his rifle, then nodded toward the hearth. "Sit. Warm yourself. I'll get food on." Anna obeyed, stretching her hands toward the flames. For the first time in months, heat thawed her fingers. The scent of venison stew filled the room as Jed worked, moving with the ease of a man who had long lived alone. She studied him cautiously. His face was lined, but not with cruelty, rather with years of storms and solitude. His shoulders were massive, his hands scarred, but every motion was deliberate, never wasteful. When he set a bowl before her, she whispered, "Why? Why save me?" He lowered himself into the chair opposite her, the firelight catching the steel in his gaze. "Because I know what men like Briggs do, and I won't see it done again." Anna pressed her lips together, fighting tears. She lifted the spoon, and as the hot broth touched her lips, a strange thought flickered through her mind. She was still frightened, still uncertain, but for the first time since her father's death, she did not feel entirely alone. And that, she realized, was the beginning of something far more dangerous than fear: hope. The morning after the auction, the mountains rose before them, dark and white-capped, against a steel-gray sky. Jed tightened the straps on the mule that carried their supplies, then handed Anna a woolen shawl he had found in his chest. "Keep close," he said. "The trail's mean after snow." Anna pulled the shawl around her shoulders, clutching it tight as she followed him up the narrow path. The cold bit her cheeks, and the snow crunched underfoot. Her body ached from days of hunger, but something steadier than fear kept her moving. The knowledge that each step carried her further from Samuel Briggs and the jeering crowd of Elk Creek. Jed was a silent guide. He spoke only when the trail demanded it. "Step here, rocks are loose," or "Hold the mule's rope, she'll pull steady." His voice was rough as gravel, yet there was no sharpness in it. When they paused at midday, he built a small fire under the shelter of a pine. From his pack, he drew a strip of jerky and half a loaf of bread. Without a word, he placed them in her hands. Anna hesitated. "I can share," she offered, breaking the bread in two. Jed studied her, then accepted. A flicker of something almost like approval crossed his features. As she ate, she stole glances at him. His coat was patched in places, his boots worn thin, yet he moved with the surety of a man who belonged to these mountains. She had heard townsfolk call him a hermit, a beast, even cursed. But here, watching the way he shielded the fire from the wind with his broad shoulders, she saw no beast, only a man who had learned to live without anyone else. By nightfall, the wind sharpened to a howl. They reached a narrow clearing where Jed set about making camp. He laid spruce boughs on the ground, covered them with a heavy blanket, and motioned for her to sit. "You'll sleep here, close to the fire." Anna's voice faltered. "And you?" He shrugged. "I'll take the cold side. Done it before." Something in her heart tightened. "You said yesterday I would sleep with you now." The words tasted strange as she repeated them, fear prickling. Jed looked at her then, steady and unflinching. "I meant under my roof, not under my hand. Don't twist my words, girl." His voice softened a hair. "No man will touch you here, not unless you wish it." The tension in her chest loosened. She turned toward the flames, blinking back tears she refused to let fall. That night, wrapped in the shawl, Anna listened to the wind clawing at the pines. The fire popped, and Jed's steady breathing carried across the camp. She realized she was warmer than she had been in weeks, not just from the fire, but from the certainty that someone was watching the dark for her. The next day they climbed higher. Icicles clung to the rocks, and the crystal creek roared beneath a sheet of ice. Jed helped her across, his grip strong around her wrist. She nearly slipped, but his arm caught her fast. "You're safe," he said simply. Her heart stuttered. No one had spoken those words to her since her father's death. As they pressed on, Anna began to notice the details, the way Jed paused to let her catch her breath, the way he handed her the warmer blanket at night without comment, the way his silence never felt heavy but protective. By the time the outline of his cabin came into view, smoke curling from the chimney, logs dark against the snow, Anna felt something shift inside her. Fear had carried her up this mountain, but now another feeling began to take root. It was small, fragile, yet undeniable. It was trust. Jed's cabin stood firm against the slope, its walls darkened by years of snow and smoke. The door creaked as he pushed it open, and a wave of warmth rolled out. Pine logs crackling in the hearth, the scent of venison stew simmering in an iron pot. Anna stepped hesitantly inside. The cabin was small but not barren. A rough-hewn table, shelves lined with jars of beans and herbs, a rifle mounted above the door. A bed dominated one wall, thick with quilts, while across from it sat a narrow cot. Jed hung his coat, then motioned toward the fire. "Sit, warm yourself." Anna obeyed, stretching her hands toward the flames. The heat bit into her frozen fingers until they tingled. She looked over her shoulder as Jed ladled stew into 2 bowls. When he set one before her, he gave a short nod. "Eat first, I'll eat after." Her throat tightened. She had not been offered food with such quiet respect in months. She bent over the bowl, steam fogging her lashes, and the first sip nearly made her weep. The days that followed settled into a rhythm. In the mornings, Jed chopped wood outside, his axe splitting logs with a rhythm that echoed through the trees. Anna swept the floor, tended the fire, and sewed patches into his worn shirts. When she offered to cook, he hesitated, then agreed with a grunt. Her first loaf of bread came out lopsided, but Jed ate it without complaint. "Needs more salt," he said, though there was a flicker of a smile in his eyes. At night, when the wind rattled the shutters, Jed would take the cot and leave the bed to her. Anna protested once. "You should have the bed. It's your home." He shook his head. "It's yours now, too. You'll need your strength." The words struck deeper than she expected. "Yours now, too." She lay awake that night, staring at the log rafters, wondering if he meant them. One afternoon, she found him mending a trap outside. "Will you teach me?" she asked. His brow lifted. "Teach you? To set traps? To chop wood? To do the work you do?" Her voice wavered, but held steady. "I don't want to be useless." Jed studied her for a long moment, then placed the axe in her hands. "Feet apart. Swing from your shoulders." Her first strike barely dented the log. She flushed, muttering, "I can't." Again. She tried. Again. Again. Finally, the wood split clean. She gasped, laughing in disbelief. Jed's mouth curved into a rare smile. "Told you." Something warm blossomed in her chest. Not just pride in the split log, but in being seen as capable. Each small act built on the last. He taught her to draw water from the creek without spilling, to mend snares, to whistle for the mule. She cooked stews from venison and wild onions, and he praised them with quiet sincerity. When she burned the bread, he ate it anyway, chewing slow but steady. At night, they sometimes sat in silence by the fire. Jed carved figures from wood, a fox, a bear, once a bird. Anna mended socks or simply watched the flames. The silence was not empty, it was steady, like the hum of the mountain itself. One evening, the wind shrieked like wolves beyond the walls. Anna shivered despite the quilts. Jed rose, took another blanket, and draped it over her shoulders. His hand lingered for a heartbeat before he pulled away. "You're safe here," he said. Her breath caught. The words, simple as they were, carried a weight she had longed for. For the first time since her father's death, she believed them. Bit by bit, fear gave way to trust. And in its place, something else began to bloom. Something fragile, unspoken, but as real as the fire warming the cabin, a bond between two broken souls, finding strength in each other. Spring crept across the mountains, thawing streams and softening the ground. For Anna, the change of season felt like a mirror of her own life, slowly warming, slowly stirring back to strength. She had grown steadier in the cabin, her hands calloused from chores, her laughter beginning to return in quiet bursts. But peace in Elk Creek never lasted. It was Reverend Cole who brought the warning when he rode up one Sunday afternoon, his horse sweating from the climb. Jed met him outside, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "Briggs is stirring trouble," the Reverend said grimly. "He claims you kidnapped Anna. Says he intends to see the law turn against you." Jed's jaw tightened. "The law's bought and paid for in Elk Creek." Cole nodded. "Deputy Pike is already sniffing around. But worse, the man's been boasting about rights to land up near Crystal Creek. Says he's discovered veins of silver." Anna, standing just inside the doorway, froze. Her father's journal flashed in her mind, pages filled with his neat hand, describing the ore laced in the rock beds near the water. He had sworn her to keep it secret, knowing greedy men would kill for it. Her voice trembled as she stepped forward. "He doesn't know for certain, but I do." She clutched the small leather-bound book she had carried everywhere, hidden even from Jed. Opening it, she revealed the map her father had sketched, showing their farmstead and the stream running silver beneath. Jed's eyes narrowed. "That's why Briggs wanted you gone. He knew." Anna nodded, guilt pressing heavy. "I should have told you sooner. I thought if I kept it hidden, I could protect it. But now—" Jed took the journal from her, careful with the fragile pages. "This changes everything. He won't stop, not until he has it, or until he's stopped." That night, the cabin felt smaller than ever. The fire popped, throwing shadows across the walls. Anna sat on the edge of the bed, her face pale. "If the deputy comes, if Briggs twists the town against us, what if they drag me back?" Jed's voice was steady, iron in every syllable. "They won't. I swore you'd sleep under my roof, and that oath stands." Her chest ached with the weight of it. "You've already lost once, your wife, your child. I don't want you to lose again because of me." For a moment, his silence was heavy. Then, quietly, "Losing them taught me this. When you have something worth protecting, you don't let go. You fight." Anna looked at him through tears. "And am I worth that fight?" Jed's eyes met hers, fierce and unwavering, more than Briggs will ever understand. The following days grew tense. In town, Briggs spread filth with every breath, painting Anna as a fallen girl living in sin with a hermit, accusing Jed of crimes that carried the weight of rope and gallows. Whispers reached even Ironwood's church pews, yet not all turned away. Reverend Cole and his wife stood firm, telling others of the truth they had seen. The bruises on Anna when Jed brought her from the auction, the decency with which she was treated. Slowly, voices rose in her defense. But Briggs's money was loud, and Pike's badge was heavier than conscience. One evening, smoke curled on the horizon. By the time Jed and Anna reached the ridge, the cabin's chicken coop was ablaze. Tracks in the mud told the story. Briggs's men had come to warn them. Jed stared at the flames, his jaw hard. Next time, it won't be the coop, it'll be the cabin. Anna shivered, clutching her father's journal. She had thought the mountains might shelter them, but now she understood. The fight was not over. It had only begun, and if they were to survive, she would need to summon every ounce of courage she possessed, not just to stand beside Jed, but to face the whole town that once watched her sold like cattle. The night came heavy with clouds, the kind that smothered moonlight and left the forest in shadow. Anna sat by the fire, her father's journal clutched in her lap, when the sound of horses broke the silence. Jed was already on his feet, rifle in hand. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low and calm. Moments later, boots crunched against the porch. The door shuddered under a violent knock, then swung open. Samuel Briggs stepped inside with Deputy Pike at his shoulder and 3 rough men crowding behind them. Their lanterns threw crooked light across the cabin walls. "There she is," Briggs sneered, his gaze fixed on Anna. "The runaway labor girl. Hand her over, Harper, before the law comes down on you." Jed didn't move. His broad frame blocked their view of her. "She's not leaving, not tonight, not ever." Pike tapped his badge with a smug grin. "You don't get to decide that. Law says she's Briggs's property until her father's debts are paid." Anna's voice rose before fear could silence her. "Law doesn't own me. My father's land is mine, and I can prove it." She lifted the leather-bound journal, its pages trembling in her hands. "This is his will, his maps, his words, and everyone in this town will hear them if you dare drag me away." For a moment, the room went still. Briggs's smile faltered. Jed's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You hear her. She's no one's chattel. You'll walk out that door, or you'll be carried." Briggs's men shifted uneasily, their eyes flicking between Jed's rifle and the fire burning in Anna's eyes. Even Pike hesitated, sweat beading on his brow despite the cold. "You think you can stand against the mine, against the badge?" Briggs hissed. Jed stepped forward, forcing them back a pace. "I stand against any man who thinks he can break a woman for profit. If you want a fight, you've found one." The silence stretched, thick and dangerous. Then, one by one, Briggs's hired men lowered their eyes. No coin was worth dying on a mountain against Harper's rifle and the girl's unyielding defiance. Briggs cursed, spittle flying. "This isn't over!" He stormed out, Pike stumbling after him. Their horses pounded down the trail, leaving the cabin in sudden quiet. Anna sagged against the table, the journal clutched to her chest. Jed lowered the rifle, his breath steady, but his eyes still blazing. "You were brave," he said quietly. Her lips trembled. "I was terrified." He stepped closer, his hand resting over hers on the journal. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's standing anyway, and you did." The fire crackled between them, casting its glow over the cabin walls. Outside, the night was heavy with threats still to come, but inside they had faced the storm together, and neither had yielded. Dawn crept slowly over the ridge, painting the snow-dusted pines in pale gold. Smoke curled from the cabin chimney, rising steady into the morning sky. Inside, the fire still burned, its warmth wrapping the small room in comfort after a night heavy with threats. Anna sat at the table, her father's journal resting open before her. Her hands no longer shook when she touched its pages. She had spoken the truth aloud, stood her ground against Briggs and Pike, and lived to see morning. For the first time, she felt more than a victim. She felt like her father's daughter. Jed moved quietly about the cabin, setting a pot of coffee over the flames. His presence filled the room as always, steady, solid, unbreakable. When he placed a steaming tin cup before her, she met his eyes. "They'll be back," she said softly. "Maybe," he admitted, "but they'll find this mountain harder than they reckon." He leaned forward, his rough hand covering hers. "And they'll find you're not alone anymore." Tears welled, but she smiled through them. This feels like home." Jed's eyes softened, a rare warmth breaking through his weathered face. "It is, if you'll have it." Outside, the wind swept through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of a fight not yet finished. But within the cabin, firelight glowed, and two souls scarred by loss found themselves standing on the threshold of something new. Was it strong enough to outlast the greed and hatred waiting below the mountain? Only time would tell. Every time I tell a story like Anna's, I'm reminded that hope is often born in the harshest winters. Her courage, Jed's vow. These speak to anyone who has ever stood against cruelty and chosen to fight for dignity. Where are you listening from today? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if you still believe in love that protects, heals, and defies the odds, stay close. The next tale is waiting for you.